In the heart of the snow-covered thicket, where every tree was clad in a shimmering coat of hoarfrost, Yunju left behind her footprints on the fluffy white blanket. The air was piercingly fresh, and each of her exhalations turned into clouds of vapor, slowly dissolving into the cold winter atmosphere. This young girl, whose life was just beginning after graduating from college, found peace in being alone among the snow-covered trees, savoring every moment of being in this magical forest. Walking along a path hidden under the snow, Yunju met a local forest dweller, a cute squirrel. It was a brief but pleasant interaction in which the girl found another confirmation of her connection to nature. After this chance encounter, she continued on her way, immersed in her thoughts and admiration for the world around her. Soon, through the dense veil of snowy branches, Yunju saw something that made her heart race in anticipation of adventure. A castle appeared in the middle of the forest like a fairy tale image. The sight was so unexpected that for a moment she wondered if it was real or a figment of her imagination. The castle seemed mysterious and appealing, raising a lot of questions about who could have been its master and what secrets lurked behind its walls. Pondering whether she would reach the castle in time for the appointed time, Yunju felt anxious. Time seemed to take on a new meaning as the opportunity to explore something amazing opened up in front of her that could be the beginning of her new story. Her heart was filled with hope of meeting the unknown, and every step brought her closer to the mysterious castle, which already beckoned her with its secrets. In the depths of the castle, hidden from the eyes of the average man by a mask of mystery and grandeur, there was a tense atmosphere. In a spacious, poorly lit room, Langle sat on a throne of gloomy thoughts. His eyes were staring into the void, his mind absorbed in heavy thoughts that made the room look even more depressing. Silence reigned around him, broken only by the rustle of footsteps. A servant girl moved like a shadow beside Langle. Her movements were full of anxiety, and her eyes were full of fear of the lord of the castle. She clumsily held the teacup in her hands, and the tension of the moment did its work. The cup slipped from her trembling hands and shattered on the floor, adding to the gloomy atmosphere with the clinking sound of clattering gold. This moment was the culmination of the tension in the air, and it seemed that even the castle walls trembled at the unexpected sound. The maid stood still like a little mouse, waiting for Langle's anger. Her eyes were a reflection of despair, for even the slightest mistake could have unpredictable consequences for her. At that moment, time seemed to slow down, and the entire castle held its breath, waiting for Langle's reaction to what had happened. Such was the atmosphere inside the castle, where every rustle and every glance was full of meaning, and the silence spoke more than words could express. Here, among walls saturated with stories of the past, each day brought with it new challenges for those who inhabited this gloomy house. Unexpectedly, in a moment of tense silence, when the air around them was saturated with expectation and anxiety, Vern appeared. With his gray beard and imposing appearance, he seemed to embody wisdom and calmness, contrasting with the gloomy atmosphere of the castle. His appearance brought a new element to the already heated situation. Vern's gaze fell on the maid, who, panic-stricken, was apologizing to Langle. Her words were filled with fear and despair, while Langle remained unfailingly calm, as if isolated from the ongoing chaos by his own musings. Vern wasted no time in approaching the master of the castle with important news. A new guest had arrived. The message broke through the silence like lightning and added a new note of tension to the atmosphere. Langle, whose calm had been shattered by the unexpected news, burst into anger. His decision was immediate and unequivocal. If the newcomer turned out to be another of the many charlatans who dared to appear in his castle, his fate would be sad and final. Langle would cut off his head. This decision only emphasized the heavy atmosphere in the castle, where each new visitor could cause a new conflict or frustration. Vern, aware of his lord's cruelty, only nodded in understanding, for his job was only to convey the message, not to evaluate Langle's decisions. At that moment, everyone in the hall felt the surroundings grow even colder, and the castle itself seemed to be preparing for a new chapter of its long and dark history. The castle guards, standing at its gloomy gates, were accustomed to the ominous silence that enveloped their constant watch. They silently watched the gallows where the bodies of the unfortunate guests, whose names and stories had long since been erased from memory, swayed. The number of those who had thus ended their journey in this place was so great that even the experienced guards could not recall the exact number, lost in speculation and conjecture. These gallows served as a grim reminder of the fate awaiting those who dared to disturb the gloomy peace of the castle or incur the wrath of its master. Suddenly, their usual vigilant solitude was broken. The guards stared dumbfounded at the emaciated figure slowly approaching the castle. It was Yunju who, overcoming the winter cold and fatigue from the long journey, had finally reached her goal. Her appearance came as a surprise to the guards, for it had been a long time since anyone had dared to set foot on this ominous land willingly, and with such an emaciated appearance. Wasting no time, they demanded that she introduce herself, their voices sounding stern and peremptory. There was tension in the air at this point, for every new alien to the guards was a potential threat or another unfortunate whose name would soon be forgotten, like so many before him. Yunju, standing in front of them, felt the weighty and piercing gazes that were searching for answers in her. At this moment, her fate hung in the balance, for her answer could determine her future within these dark and mysterious walls. In the shadow of Duke Langel's gloomy castle, which has long been covered with an aura of indifference and cruelty, a tense scene unfolded. Yunju, a girl with an unwavering gaze and unyielding will, asked the guards of this ancient manor to let her in. Her words sounded confident and clear. She claimed to be a guest from a distant Earth, skillfully taking advantage of the rumors that the Duke, despite his sinister reputation, did not refuse hospitality to those who came from this mysterious planet. The guards, dressed in heavy armor that seemed to have absorbed the centuries-old harshness and coldness of the castle walls, looked at Yunju carefully. Their gazes, piercing and assessing, slid over her countenance, trying to plumb the depths of her soul, looking for signs of lying or deceit. Despite the Duke's welcoming rule, they put forward a strict warning. If it turned out that Yunju had lied and her roots did not go to the depths of the earth, this day would be her last. Thus, the air around them thickened with tension, and every moment of waiting for the guard's decision became a test for the girl, who became hostage to her own words and the courage with which she dared to step on the threshold of this place, shrouded in secrets and dark legends. In the secluded living room of Duke Langel's majestic castle, where every piece of the interior seemed to hold age-old secrets and stories, Yunju found a moment of tranquility. She sat immersed in the world of the music she listened to through headphones, excluding the outside world with all its mysteries and anxieties. At this very time, a scene full of excitement and genuine emotion unfolded in another part of the castle. Langle, the Duke of the castle, known for his unapproachability and aloofness, was literally stunned by the sudden news brought by his faithful servant Vern. The announcement of the arrival of a certain Jay struck his heart like a lightning bolt, triggering a flurry of emotions and memories. The name, heard in the silence of the castle corridors, was a clue to long-forgotten feelings, forcing the Duke to act immediately. With a joy that had not visited his heart for a long time, Langle rushed toward the parlor where he thought the long-awaited guest must be. His steps were quicker and more determined than ever. Each moment as he approached the living room, he felt the growing excitement of the meeting he had been waiting for. His eyes sparkled with genuine joy, and his heart beat in anticipation of the moment when he would see again the face that had left an indelible mark on his soul. Yunju, wrapped in the excitement of anticipation of the meeting, couldn't escape the thought of the gift she had carefully selected for Langel. It was not just a pillow, but a symbol of their childhood memories, an embodiment of the warmth and care they shared in their youth. The pillow, tenderly embraced by her arms, seemed like a bridge between past and present, between childhood when Langle was her puppy, and today when they were to meet again. It was something more than a reunion of old friends. It was a rekindling of the invisible bond that had connected their hearts throughout their lives. Overwhelmed with hope and trepidation, Yunju felt her every step bringing her closer to the long-awaited meeting. In her imagination, Langle was no longer the little boy from her childhood pictures. He had become the man she had longed to see again. With every moment, with every breath, she felt the excitement mingle with warm anticipation. After all, in her hands was not just a gift, but the key to recreating those carefree days of their childhood, when they were together, when they could laugh and enjoy life without worrying about tomorrow. Finding herself in a situation worthy of the most vivid fantasies, Yunju never ceased to be amazed that her smartphone not only did not lose connection with satellites, but continued to work confidently in a world where medieval castles and knights would seem commonplace rather than a decorative element on the phone screen. She flipped through playlists, choosing music that helped her feel connected to modernity despite the absurdity of what was happening around her. At that moment, to the sound of her favorite tune, she couldn't help herself and began to dance, letting the rhythm carry her away from reality. But the dance was interrupted by a sudden realization of the importance of the coming meeting. Yunju, remembering her as a beacon in the mist of the unknown world, realized that it was necessary to meet Langle in full readiness, clothed in the seriousness and majesty of the moment. For Langle, standing just beyond the threshold, was not just a figure from the past. He was the key to her new reality, the bridge connecting her to the world she had entered. So she quickly came to her senses, removing traces of her recent carefree merriment, and tuned into a wave of seriousness befitting the grandeur of the moment. Yunju realized that the upcoming meeting with Langle would be a test not only for her adjustment in the new world, but also for their shared future. She knew that her every gesture, every word, would be weighed by fate, and so she strove to appear before Langle in an image that would reflect the depth and seriousness of her intentions. At this moment, standing on the threshold of a new life, Yunju was ready to meet her future face to face in full confidence and with the dignity that befits those who stand at the boundary of worlds and eras. When the moment of the meeting finally arrived, time seemed to stand still between Yunju and Langle. They stood across from each other, eye to eye, trying to read familiar features on faces that time had inevitably changed. The moment dragged on, filled with silence and unspoken questions, misunderstanding and doubt in the air. Their gazes were intertwined with hope and hesitation as they both wondered, is this really the same person with whom I shared the joys and sorrows of my childhood? Or is this just a figment of my imagination? Searching for an answer and eager to break the awkwardness, Yunju decided to take a step that could confirm their shared past or dispel illusions. She remembered something they both held dear as children, their favorite cartoon character. The question she asked was no accident. It was the key to the hidden memories they shared, a secret code that could open the doors of their shared past. Langle, confronted with the unexpected question, was for a moment embarrassed. His reaction was a reflection of his inner struggle, for the question was about something very personal and long forgotten. Pensive, he searched not only his memory but also his heart for the answer, trying to find that magical link that would connect their worlds again. This moment of confusion and reflection was a test for both of them, a test of the strength of their friendship and the authenticity of the memories they held so dear. This pause, filled with hesitation and excitement, was the decisive moment of their meeting. She put a question before them, the answer to which would determine whether they could once again find common ground and revive the warm relationship that once bound their souls, or whether their paths would part, leaving only sweet nostalgia for the days spent together. After moments of tense waiting and inner doubts, Langle finally found the right answer to the question Yunju asked. It was a moment of truth when their shared memories and friendship were confirmed, like a newly lit beacon in a fog of doubt. The correct answer was not only the key to the past, but also the bridge that connected their hearts after years of separation. Yunju, unable to hide her joy and relief, smiled, the same smile that had been the light in their childhood games. She spread her arms in an inviting gesture as if opening her heart to a long-lost but now newly found friend. This gesture was a sign to Langle that he could not ignore. Langle, touched to the core and overcome with excitement that made him blush, hugged Yunju slowly but confidently. In his embrace sounded not only relief that she was near again, but also immense joy at the realization that his childhood friend, his puppy, had not left him, had not forgotten. It was a moment of rekindling their friendship when all fears and doubts were dispelled and warmth and closeness took their place once again. The hug became a symbol of the unbreakable bond between Yunju and Langle, a reminder that true friendship can survive separation and the tests of time. In that moment, as past and present merged together, both felt that their friendship had only grown stronger, enriched with new memories and feelings that they would cherish in their hearts. In that dark moment when Yunju's world came crashing down, she experienced a horrifying event. Her life and the lives of all her family members were cruelly reshaped in an instant when their car failed to control itself on a slippery, snow-covered road and plummeted into a deep chasm, swallowed up by the abyss due to the snowfall. This catastrophe has left Yunju completely isolated from the world where she once knew the warmth of family hugs and carefreeness. Daily, she woke up with a heaviness in her soul. Her existence became an unending nightmare in which she was plunged into the darkness of loneliness, deprived of any support and comfort her family could offer her. All those days before meeting Ludwig Langle, Yunju struggled with the inner demons that fueled her fears and increased her sense of despair. Thoughts of death began to seem like an escape from the unbearable pain of loss that hung over her life like a heavy cloud. She was in a state of absolute loss and hopelessness, where every day brought only a reminder of lost happiness and the irreplaceable vacuum in her heart. It was a time when Yunju seemed to have lost all reason to live, and her soul was shrouded in a shroud of longing and hopelessness. Meeting Ludwig Langel was a ray of light in this bottomless darkness, promising some change in her bleak existence, filled with grief and loneliness. When Yunju woke up in the sterile hospital room, she felt lost in the unknown. The white walls, the beeping of the monitors, and the smell of antiseptic in the air only added to her confusion. She couldn't remember how she had ended up here, and every attempt to piece together the fragments of memory brought only pain and confusion. At this point, the only evidence that there was a world outside these walls was a surprise visit from her uncle. His face expressed deep concern and worry, which became an anchor for Yunju to connect her to reality. The uncle explained that his anxiety was caused by her silence. He said that he had repeatedly tried to contact her, but all his attempts had gone unanswered, which only increased his anxiety. His eyes were filled with genuine concern and a desire to help, which was a ray of light for Yunju in her dark reality. He offered her to move in with him, thus offering her not only a roof over her head, but a chance for a new beginning, a chance to gradually pick herself up piece by piece and start her life with a clean slate, surrounded by someone who cared about her well-being. At that moment, faced with a difficult choice, Yunju felt a spark of hope light up in her chest. Realizing that loneliness and isolation would not bring her healing, she decided to accept her uncle's offer. For her, agreeing to move was not just a change of residence, but also the first step towards recovery, an opportunity to start healing her emotional wounds in an atmosphere of support and understanding. The move marked a new stage in Yunju's life, filled with hope that the darkest pages of her past would gradually be left behind. In a quiet corner of her mind, Yunju marveled at her uncle's unprecedented transformed nature. Time seemed to have molded him into new features, endowing him with amazing economic abilities that Yunju didn't even know existed. As anxiety began to thicken on the horizon of her future, uncertainty gripped her heart tightly, leaving no room for solutions. What to do next? This question, like bubbles in water, surfaced more and more often, but the answer remained hidden behind a fog of uncertainty. It was at this moment that her uncle, as if reading her thoughts and sensing her inner struggle, proposed a solution that was so unexpected that Yunju was speechless for a moment. With care and concern in his voice, he suggested to her one firm where Yunji could get a job in her specialty. This sentence was more than just words. It was a beacon in a sea of doubt that could guide her to the shores of new beginnings, to finding meaning and purpose in life. The uncle, standing now not only as a relative but also as a mentor, opened doors for Yunju to a future where she could fulfill her potentials and aspirations. In the spacious and bright corridors of the building that housed the firm, Yunju found herself face to face with the man who would play a key role in her future career. Kei, Yunju's future boss, looked at her carefully before starting the conversation. He explained that Yunju had a difficult task ahead of her. She was to take on the responsibility of supervising orphans. This mission required not only professional skills but also personal commitment, because she had to take these children into her life, provide them with a home, warmth, and care as if they were her own children. The task was enormous. Yunju had to create such an environment for each child that they would feel loved and protected like in a real family. It was a test not only of her professionalism but also of her heart, requiring boundless compassion and dedication. Deep in his heart, Kay was convinced that the task of a curator of orphans was not merely to look after the physical well-being of the wards, but to give them unconditionally all the immense love that could kindle the light in their souls. He deeply believed that every child without parental warmth deserved to be cherished and truly loved, no matter how hard it was for the handler. However, when he met Yunju's gaze, Kay felt the need to share another important thought with her. He emphasized that if, for whatever reason, she is unable to handle the duties of a supervisor in the time allotted to her, it will not be a verdict on the children. Yunju listened to him, trying to catch every word because Kay was talking about something very important. He assured her that even if she failed, the orphans would still have a chance to find a family and love with another mentor. These words carried both hope and a reminder that the mission of a mentor is a never-ending baton of kindness and care. There came a moment in the conversation when Kay decided to dispel the tension inherent in such serious conversations and introduced young Ludwig Langel to Yunju. This young man was not just another child in need of care, he came from a completely different world. This revelation should have sounded incredible, but Kay spoke with such confidence and calmness that Yunju realized she was facing an unusual task that could change her perception of the curatorial mission's capabilities. Ludwig Langel, the boy from another world, was now in her care, and this was the beginning of their journey together, full of mystery, amazing discoveries, and most definitely a deep human connection. Squatting down to be level with the boy's gaze, Yunju softly introduced herself, choosing to go by the name Jay. It seemed to her that such a simple and easy-to-pronounce name would help establish the first bridge of trust between her and Ludwig. This moment, when two completely different worlds met gazes, was full of sincerity and warmth. For Yunju, it was more than just a formality. It was a momentous act of opening the door to a new world of understanding and caring. That day is forever etched in Yunju's memory, leaving a deep imprint on her heart. Facing Ludwig's innocent eyes for the first time in a long time, she felt the tension and anxiety that had long clutched at her heart dissipate like fog in the morning sunlight. It was like magic, a moment when the gray, everyday existence was suddenly filled with bright colors and meaning. Yunju's resolve was stronger than ever. She promised herself that despite any circumstances, even if fate wanted to separate them, she would never let Ludwig go from her heart. It wasn't just a promise to the boy. It was a quiet vow to herself to be a support, a protection, and a light in the life of this little man who came from another world. Yunju felt a deep bond, unfathomable and mysterious, now binding her to Ludwig, promising the trials but also the joys that awaited them ahead. Returning home, Yunju realized that Ludwig's outfit was attracting too much attention. Her heart filled with determination to pick something less flashy for him, so that the boy could mix freely with the crowd without raising too many questions. When she stepped into her home, however, she was faced with an unexpected obstacle. She had nothing but dresses in her closet. The collection reflected her own style but seemed inappropriate for a boy like Ludwig. The longer Yunju tried on various outfits on Ludwig, the more she became convinced of the incredible paradox of the situation. With every dress he wore, it became obvious that these elegant looks suited him extraordinarily. This unexpected harmony between the elegant lines of his dresses and his figure was astonishing. She found each time new shades of his appearance, which before had seemed to her completely invisible. On the one hand, this revelation caused a wave of warm feelings and mortification in Yunju's soul, seeing Ludwig's extraordinary transformation in these outfits. On the other hand, there was a longing in her heart for the simplicity and ease she had been so eager to give him in choosing new clothes. This contrast between wishful thinking and reality sharpened her senses, making the moment even more memorable and special. The moment Ludwig suddenly started coughing so hard that his breathing became intermittent and heavy, the atmosphere in the room changed dramatically. With each coughing fit that shook his small body, it was clear that he was gripped by a fever. The warm glow of his skin and the anxious gleam in his eyes left no doubt about the seriousness of the boy's condition. Yunju, whose heart clenched with worry and compassion, wasted no time. With affectionate care, she supported Ludwig, helping him get comfortable in the bed, providing the coziness and comfort that could ease his suffering just a little. She carefully placed an extra pillow under his head to ease his breathing and covered him with a warm blanket, creating a sense of security and care. After Ludwig was tucked in and surrounded by care, Yunju headed to the kitchen with the sole purpose of making soup for him. A plan was already maturing in her mind, to prepare something light yet nutritious that could keep him strong and help him fight his illness. She imagined the aroma of fresh homemade soup filling the room, bringing with it comfort and hope of recovery. There was a sense of determination and care in her movements, for every step was aimed at helping Ludwig feel better. In that quiet and cozy moment, when Yunju was carefully bringing a spoonful of soup to Ludwig's lips, trying to make his meal as comfortable and pleasant as possible, her gaze accidentally fell on his neck. There, amongst the boy's pale skin, she found traces of wounds that immediately caught her attention. These small but telling scars on Ludwig's body caused a wave of anxiety and worry in Yunju's soul. She tried to hide her anxiety so as not to upset the boy, but deep inside her heart squeezed with pain and sympathy for his unspoken suffering. Yunju realized that each of these marks carried a story of pain that Ludwig might be too young to understand or put into words. She wanted to hug him, to tell him that he was safe now, but at the same time she felt powerless over his past. A heavy silence enveloped the room as Yunju continued to feed Ludwig, trying not to show her excitement. The truth was, however, that a birth mother would call her son a devil's spawn and subject him to such an ordeal. Amidst the shadows of the past, hidden behind the boy's innocent gaze, lay the dark secret of his existence. Ludwig, whose small years should have been illuminated by care and love, were instead overshadowed by the cruelty of the very person who should have been his bastion of security and warmth. His mother, who for unknown reasons saw in her son not a source of joy and pride but a devilish brat, tortured his body and soul, leaving the marks of her madness and delusions on his tender skin. This painful truth about Ludwig's past, though not spoken aloud, resounded louder than any words through the scars and wounds that had been inflicted upon him. Each of these marks was like a cry for help that unfortunately went unheard within the walls of a home where love and care should have reigned. In a corner of the world where education and intelligence were valued above all else, one of Ludwig's teachers, with deep respect and genuine admiration, expressed an opinion of his amazing mental abilities. In spite of his physical limitations, the sage asserted that the boy had an intelligence present which far exceeded the ordinary and which, without doubt, must be cultivated and developed to the limit of his capacity. This intelligence was a rare gift that could bring untold benefits not only to himself, but to all mankind if its development was given a push in the right direction. In the shadow of this magnificent visionary statement, however, stood his mother, a woman with a heart that seemed devoid of all warmth and compassion. Despite clear calls for development and support, she continued to keep Ludwig under strict lock and key. Her methods of parenting were cruel and indifferent to his needs and well-being. Every day, as a symbol of her indifference, she threw him only leftovers, leaving him to his physical and emotional well-being. This cruel routine was not just a way of life, but an agonizing reality for Ludwig, who remained locked away, deprived of the opportunity to explore the world and his great potential that his teacher saw so vividly. After a hard and exhausting struggle with fever, Ludwig finally felt relief. A warm and soothing feeling awakened him from his deep, feverish sleep. When he opened his eyes, he instantly felt an unusual calm and security that he hadn't experienced in a long time. His gaze, wading through the remnants of sleep, stopped on an unexpected yet incredibly pleasing sight. Next to his bed, sitting up and bowing her head, was Yunju sleeping. Her calm breathing and peaceful expression said that she must have spent the whole night here without leaving his side, watching him sleep and waiting for him to wake up. This gesture of care and devotion couldn't help but touch Ludwig's heart. At that moment, he realized how deep Yunju's feelings for him were, that she was willing to spend the whole night in an uncomfortable position just to be by his side during the moments of his struggle with his illness. Her presence became for him a ray of light in the dark realm of his illness, a symbol of hope for a speedy recovery. This moment was not just an awakening from fever for Ludwig, but an awakening to a new perception of those around him, especially Yunju, whose loyalty and care now seemed priceless to him. When Yunju opened her eyes, she was surprised to find that her location had changed during her sleep. She was now on the bed, and beside her, immersed in a peaceful sleep, lay Ludwig. The waking moment enveloped her with a sense of warm peacefulness and care that so rarely visits us in the hustle and bustle of daily life. After enjoying this quiet and peaceful morning moment, Yunju, carefully, trying not to wake up Ludwig, got out of bed. She couldn't hold back a smile as she watched Ludwig sleeping peacefully beside her, whose breathing was even and calm, an imperceptible sign of his recovery. His calm face, illuminated by the first rays of the morning sun, made her heart fill with warmth and tenderness. Aware of the many tasks before her, she embarked on a long and urgent cleanup. It was not just a matter of restoring order to the physical space, but also a way to express our care and support for Ludwig, creating a clean and cozy atmosphere around him to encourage a speedy recovery. Yunju's every movement was filled with love and care. Every corner of the room that she tidied was a testament to her tender feelings and her desire to make Ludwig's awakening as pleasant and comfortable as possible. In the quiet room, where the light rustling of the curtains disturbed only the monotonous silence, something was happening, filled with a thin thread of understanding and rapprochement between two completely different worlds. Yunju approached Ludwig, who was immersed in the embrace of Morpheus, with a caution that smelled of tenderness and care. At this moment, time seemed to slow down, anticipating the importance of the moment ahead. Ludwig, sensing Yunju's approach, slowly began to open his eyes, as if the first rays of the morning sun were awakening him from a deep sleep. Yunju, seeing that Ludwig was waking up, immediately began to apologize, as if her every word was filled with guilt for disturbing the peace. Her voice sounded soft and comforting, like a spring breeze on faces. Ludwig, for his part, seemed to jump up, suddenly finding himself on the edge of reality and dream, not immediately realizing where he was. There was confusion in his eyes, but it quickly dissipated like fog in the morning light. As he gradually regained control of the situation, he realized that the person standing before him was none other than Yunju, or Jay, as she preferred to be called. This moment, though seemingly insignificant, was full of deep meaning. It became a symbol not only of a sudden awakening from sleep, but also a metaphor for a new stage in their relationship, where understanding and mutual respect were beginning to break through the veil of misunderstanding and doubt. In this scene filled with the warm colors of morning understanding, Yunju couldn't hide her mortification at the unexpected situation. Her gaze, filled with affection and care, reflected deep feelings for Ludwig, whose recent awakening had added sincerity to their intercourse. Ludwig, for his part, felt incredibly happy knowing that Jay was showing him care. This mutual care became the bridge that connected their hearts even more firmly. They decided to go to dinner together, as if confirming their willingness to share not only the food, but also a part of their souls. In an atmosphere of homeliness, where every object seemed to be filled with special meaning, Jay carefully served the food, creating a sense of celebration in the most ordinary day. Ludwig, with a smile reflecting his inner radiance, picked up an apple, a symbol of the simple joys of life. At this point, Jay decided to add a touch of playfulness to their lunch, as if wanting to make the day truly memorable. With ease and grace, she threw the sheet over her head, creating a cheerful atmosphere around such a mundane act as eating. This gesture, filled with fun and lightness, was another bridge between their hearts, allowing them to forget their daily worries. Taking the apple, Jay pulled off a little prank that proved once again that it's moments like these, filled with laughter and joy, that make life truly rich and vibrant. The home game took an unexpected turn in this episode, brimming with unexpected suspense. While Yunju, without losing her sense of humor and lightness, wrapped herself in a sheet, transforming herself into a playful witch who supposedly brought apples to her Prince Ludwig. This harmless gesture, filled with good intentions and a desire to entertain, suddenly elicited a very different reaction. When Ludwig saw the indistinct silhouette in the sheet in front of him, he remembered the fear that had haunted him since he was a child. In his imagination, the flickering shadow of Yunju was intertwined with the image of his mother, whose presence had always caused him anxiety and fear. This instantaneous and irrational sensation caught him off guard, awakening deep-seated fears rooted in his subconscious. With a wild shriek reflecting the depth of his fright and sudden terror, Ludwig fell to his knees as if trying to defend himself against an invisible threat. Yunju, who had unwittingly initiated this frightening moment, felt guilty for what had happened. Her playfulness and desire to give Ludwig joyful moments was abruptly replaced by a feeling of anxiety and nervousness. She realized that the harmless joke had led to a completely unexpected reaction, forcing her to rethink the boundaries of what was permissible in their communication. This moment was a test for both of them, forcing them to face unexpected aspects of personal fears and emotional vulnerability. In an attempt to recapture the atmosphere of serenity and joy, Yunju took a charming and creative step. She brought along a brown-colored toy dog along with a set of dog treats, creating a scene where the toy wants to strike up a friendship with Ludwig. This gesture, full of warmth and playfulness, was intended to dispel the tension that had arisen after the bad joke and to fill their communication with lightness and joy once again. Ludwig, to whom these caring efforts were directed, responded surprisingly quickly to this attempt at reconciliation. Playing with his toy dog and engaging in this light-hearted friendship scenario helped him take his mind off his recent anxieties and feel calm and secure again. Yunju, seeing Ludwig's positive reaction, continued to maintain the playful atmosphere by gently and caringly interacting with him through these new toy-like mediums. This moment was a testament to their ability to find ways to be understanding and supportive even in the most unexpected situations. Yunju, using her wit and empathy, was able to not only smooth over the consequences of her earlier joke, but also create a space where Ludwig could feel comfortable and joyful again. This episode emphasized the importance of being sensitive and attentive to each other's emotional state. demonstrating how a creative and caring approach can help overcome moments of misunderstanding and restore harmony in a relationship. In one of the magical moments of their friendship, Yunju warmly wrapped her arms around Ludwig, handing him not just a toy, but a piece of her heart. She whispered words of promise that this plush protector would stand guard over his dreams and fears, keeping him safe in dark times. The scent of warmth and homeliness wafted around them, creating an atmosphere of complete trust and understanding. It was a moment when time seemed to stop to give them the opportunity to enjoy the purity and sincerity of their bond. The following days were a time of new discoveries for Yunju and Ludwig. Yunju took on the role of a teacher and began to introduce Ludwig to the world of words and language. Using cards, each imbued with the warmth of her endeavors, she gradually revealed to him the splendor of communication. With each new word Ludwig learned, her eyes shone with joy and pride. These moments of formation and mutual support were filled with fun and laughter, adding bright colors to their daily lives. Yunju was not just teaching Ludwig words, she was exposing him to a world where every word and every phrase can create bridges between hearts and souls. With each new word that Ludwig internalized, he became not just more aware of the world around him, but also closer to Yunju's heart, strengthening the invisible bond that connected them. Ludwig showed such quick learning and absorbed knowledge with such avidity that Yunju couldn't contain her admiration. Her confidence that his brilliant mind would one day open doors for him in Mensa seemed unshakable. However, despite all their success in training, Yunju felt some kind of barrier between them. Despite many weeks of living and studying together, Ludwig never allowed her to fully enter his inner world. This distance was unsettling and somewhat unsettling to her, for she was not only seeking to educate him, but to build a deep emotional connection. Deciding that it was time to take a little time away from her studies and try to bond with Ludwig on another level, Yunju suggested doing something that could dilute their daily lessons with joy and warmth. She chose cooking as her medium, offering to cook something special and fun with Ludwig, cutlets but not plain ones, but in the shape of cute puppies. This idea was filled not only with the desire to diversify their diet, but also with the hope that cooking together would be a bridge that would connect their hearts, allow Ludwig to open up and show a new, more open side of himself. Thus, the kitchen became a place of magic and creativity, where each of them could express themselves not only through the taste of the dish, but also through its appearance. Laughter and joy filled the space around them as they molded cutlets, trying to give them as accurate an outline of puppies as possible. Not only did this process keep them entertained, but Yunju hoped that cooking together would help Ludwig feel more relaxed and open, letting him know that he was in a safe and supportive environment. The moment Yunju looked back at the cutlet prepared by Ludwig, her eyes lit up with pleasure and pride. She didn't hold back and expressed her admiration, noting how talented and neatly the boy had done the job. This cutlet was not just a food, it became a symbol of something much bigger, Ludwig's ability to learn new things and excel even in such mundane tasks as cooking. Ludwig, in turn, took a careful bite of his creation. The taste made his eyes sparkle with satisfaction and joy. He picked up on the flavor, not only from the ingredients, but also a bit of his own diligence and care put into the preparation. Seeing his reaction, Yunju couldn't resist showing tenderness, and smacking his cheek, she praised his progress. The gesture was full of warmth and support, and spoke volumes, of recognition of Ludwig's efforts, of his growth not only as a young culinary artist but also as a person. This exchange of emotion and praise was another step towards strengthening their relationship. He emphasized the importance of those moments when one can forget about all academic tasks and just enjoy the process of creating together. It was a way for Yunju to show Ludwig that he was valuable not only for his mental abilities, but also for his ability to enjoy the small things, finding beauty in everyday moments and sharing that joy with others. They remembered the evening as a time filled with laughter, joy, and harmony, when each of them could feel part of something more than just teacher and student, part of a real family. The moment Yunju delicately kissed Ludwig's cheek, he felt excited and embarrassed. This kind of affection was unexpected, but at the same time pleasant. Ludwig didn't have the courage to reciprocate, but he gathered his will and gently kissed Yunju back, expressing his gratitude and acceptance of her care and affection. This was the turning point in their relationship. The exchange of tenderness led to Yunju warmly embracing the boy, enveloping him in an atmosphere of safety and belonging. From that moment on, Ludwig truly opened up to her, accepting her not just as a friend and mentor, but as a member of the family. Their bond strengthened so much that a new chapter in their lives began, full of happiness and shared moments together. Yunju and Ludwig began to spend all their days together, blurring the boundaries between guardian and ward. They became a real family for each other, where Yunju was a loving and caring mother and Ludwig was her son, ready to share all joys and sorrows with her. Together they did chores, learned new things, cooked and even explored the world around them, inseparable and determined to support each other in everything. In this way, their relationship has evolved into something deeply moving and meaningful, demonstrating that true family is not always defined by blood ties, but rather by a community of hearts and souls. Yunju and Ludwig's life was filled with happiness and mutual understanding, showing everyone an example of unbreakable love and support. In one unexpected moment, when the silence of the house was only gently broken by the faint sounds of the night, Yunju felt a sharp pain under her leg. It was a construction set forgotten on the floor that she had stepped on. At the first moment, her irritation flared up with renewed vigor, for Ludwig, who was asleep, seemed to be the culprit. Her heart cooled quickly, however, and she hastened to hold back the surge of anger, reminding herself that it was common for children to leave behind traces of restless play, and it was part of their world of fantasy and exploration. Thus, she accepted the incident with ease and understanding, considering it a small price to pay for the joy of motherhood and caring for a child. At this moment, when Yunju was in a state of peace and acceptance, her uncle approached her. He was not alone. His child from the other world was with him, and he was watching. It was far from an ordinary occurrence in their lives, for every visit from the other world was filled not only with the joy of meeting, but with a mystery that enveloped its essence. Uncle Yunju, despite his magical duties, always found a way to strengthen ties with the family by carrying his unusual ward across the boundaries of worlds, who, like Ludwig, was full of childlike mysteries and wonders. Getting into her uncle's car, Yunju found herself at the center of an unexpected storm. Jin, a child whose tolerance seemed to be running out, began pouring out his displeasure that Yunju was delayed because of Ludwig. His words, filled with complaints and impatience, sounded like a monotonous noise in Yunju's ears, causing her to feel a mixture of irritation and fatigue. The situation in the car became more and more tense with every phrase Jean uttered until it finally reached a boiling point. Yunju, whose patience had been exhausted to the limit under the pressure of Jin's endless admonishments, suddenly lost control of her own emotions. She answered Jean with a shout, letting her voice fill with a power and irritation that was completely uncharacteristic of her. That moment was an explosion of emotion, when instead of peace and quiet, the interior of the car was filled with voices in argument, each trying to outshout the other. Uncle, caught in the role of mediator between the two flighty souls, tried to find a way to calm the escalating situation. His attempts to restore peace and tranquility to the car were like the maneuvers of a seasoned captain trying to keep a ship from crashing in a storm. With dexterity and patience, he tried to smooth over the sharp edges of the conflict, reminding us of the importance of understanding and patience, even when emotions tend to take over. Jin, the young heir to the throne of the majestic Khan continent, is a being from a completely different dimension. This young prince, shrouded in an aura of power and mystery, found his refuge under the tutelage of Uncle Yunju. However, despite all efforts and attempts to surround him with care and attention, Jean from the very first moment showed himself as a personality with pronounced aggressiveness and inability to adapt to new conditions of existence. His demeanor, full of defiance and rejection, became more and more prominent in contrast to Ludwig's. Ludwig, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of his troubled counterpart. He is like an angel sent from heaven to be a source of joy and light in Yunju's life. This boy, endowed with genuine kindness and pure-heartedness, easily wins the hearts of all those around him. Its presence fills the house with warmth and comfort, creating an atmosphere of boundless happiness and harmony. His eyes reflect innocence and purity, making him a unique angel to Yunju, the embodiment of all the brightest and kindest things that can exist in this world. In a cozy corner of the world where nature still preserves its pristine beauty, Kay, in an effort to unite his unusual family, decided to introduce Jean and Ludwig to the art of farming. It wasn't just teaching them how to till the land, but trying to teach them the value of labor, mutual aid, and an understanding of life cycles. Ludwig, always full of enthusiasm and thirst for new knowledge, looked at Yunju with sparkling eyes. his smile glowing with interest and joyful anticipation of new experiences. His genuine interest and enthusiasm for the activity was contagious, and it brought warmth to the hearts of all present. Jin, on the other hand, took this activity with obvious displeasure. As he watched Ludwig and Yunju having fun, he couldn't hide his irritation and detachment. His looks, full of restrained resentment and incomprehension, cast a shadow over the lightness and joy of the moment. Deep down, Jean may have felt alienated, unable to share in the common delight and participate in the family event with the same enthusiasm. This day was a testament to the contrast between the two worlds that existed in the souls of the two boys. One was filled with curiosity and lust for life, the other with hidden struggle and inner resistance. Jean, not hiding his disdain, commented on how Ludwig was wasting a lot of time for the sake of one single tomato, as if questioning the whole point of what they were doing. Yunju, whose tolerance had been shattered, couldn't help herself. She flared up, reminding Jin that unlike Ludwig, who had at least tried to create something with his hands, Jin had achieved no results. Their verbal altercation was growing like a whirlwind ready to come crashing down, but Kay's intervention stopped the storm before it started. His words, full of wisdom and authority like a cool breeze, dispelled the tension, reminding us of the importance of family bonds and the common good. Following his peacemaking example, the family headed off to prepare for dinner, which was already waiting for them in the house. However, the road to reconciliation was not as smooth as it might have seemed. While washing his hands before dinner, Jin, perhaps trying to find a new reason to argue or just out of a desire to tease Yunju, poured water on her. This unexpected and seemingly innocent gesture unleashed a new wave of quarrel, demonstrating that the road to harmony and mutual understanding in this family is still long and thorny. Thus, a day that started with learning and joint efforts turned into a series of challenges for all participants, showing how different views on life can be and how important it is to listen and hear each other, even when emotions take over. A real storm was brewing outside, and Yunju, drenched to the skin, suggested that Ludwig change his clothes to avoid the cold. This moment was filled with care and attention to detail, as a small misunderstanding turned into an opportunity to show care for each other. While they searched for dry outfits, Jin, the culprit of this unforeseen bathing, decided to move farther away for fear of impending punishment from Yunju. She was always strict but fair, and Jin knew that his act would not go unnoticed. When they finally changed their clothes, Yunju carefully reminded Ludwig to monitor his well-being and let her know if he felt his temperature starting to rise. This was important given their previous adventures in the rain, which could easily lead to colds. Nevertheless, the silence and calmness of the moment was broken by Jean, who, unable to resist, decided to insert his 5 cents, noting that he almost didn't get water on Ludwig, as if trying to reduce his guilt in what had happened. However, Yunju quickly found a way to remind him of his manners, deftly pinning his cheeks between her fingers and reprimanding him for a reckless prank that could have cost their friend Ludwig his health. This moment illustrates not only the dynamic in their relationship, where care and attention to detail are juxtaposed with mild discontent and joking, but also emphasizes how important it is in such moments to be considerate of others, even if it seems insignificant. In the atmosphere of a warm evening filled with friendly jokes and light banter, Yunju jokingly emphasized the beauty of Jin's garnet eyes, which made him blush in surprise and embarrassment. This moment, filled with playfulness and lightness, emphasized the special bond between them. Ludwig, as if seeking support and closeness, huddled closer to Yunju, finding comfort and warmth in her presence. It went on like this for the rest of the evening, which flowed with a soft and measured rhythm. Ludwig found refuge and calm in Yunju's lap, where he seemed to have found his own little island of tranquility. Meanwhile, Yunju and Jin continued their grumpy bickering, adding momentum and playfulness to the evening. Their verbal battles were full of sparkling humor and subtle irony, demonstrating a deep affection and understanding of each other, hidden behind light ridicule. At the same time, Kay and Uncle preferred to stay away from the noisy conversations and jokes, choosing the role of observers. They sat in silence, absorbed in their thoughts and enjoying the moment of peace. Their calmness and silence contrasted with the friendly conversation, creating a special atmosphere of peace and reflection. The evening was an illustration of the diversity of characters and ways of interacting, where everyone found something different, whether in conversation, banter, or quiet contemplation. In the semi-darkness of the office, where the only source of light was the gloomy window, a tense scene between Yunju and Kay unfolded. It was not just a conversation, but a real clash of views, where not only family values were at stake, but also the future of their child, Ludwig. Yunju, overwhelmed with concern and maternal anxiety, insisted that drastic steps must be taken to correct Ludwig's growth. She was convinced that Ludwig must grow up to be no less than his peers, for otherwise he would face a difficult future full of challenges and perhaps even ridicule. Kay, on the other hand, acted as the voice of reason and pragmatism in this dialogue. He not only rejected the idea of spending huge sums of money on what he considered to be medicinal quackery, but also questioned the very efficacy of these expensive remedies. Kay was convinced that even if they did decide to make such an expenditure, the result would be marginal at best, and Ludwig would only add a few centimeters in height, which would hardly play a decisive role in his life. The argument turned into a deep discussion about values, priorities, and what really matters to their family. A flame of hope burned in Yunju's heart as she contemplated a plan to improve Ludwig's growth. She was convinced that with the help of specially selected supplements, the young man could achieve the desired growth parameters and find harmony with himself, turning into a beautiful teenager. It seemed unfair to her that Ludwig, the ward whose welfare she tirelessly monitored, was shallower than his peers, especially the girls. This fact made her uneasy, for she feared that it might make Ludwig the object of ridicule and bullying. Kay looked at the situation much more calmly. He comforted her, emphasizing that Ludwig was in the midst of transition and his current growth was understandable and not a cause for concern. "It's only a matter of time," he said, assuring him that the young man would soon catch up and his growth would pick up. Kay tried to reassure Yunju that nature would take its course and Ludwig would grow like his peers, and that it was important to keep his morale up and believe in the best. The moment Yunju knew that Ludwig, the boy from the other world whom she now considered her ward, would be all right, her heart filled with relief. The fears and anxieties that had been hovering in her soul like heavy clouds over her head began to dissipate, giving way to confidence in the future. Ludwig, a fragile boy with an unusual background, would soon be like all children his age, growing up, playing, and enjoying every new day. As she approached Ludwig, Yunju hugged him lovingly and tenderly. There was so much warmth and care in this simple but meaningful gesture that the boy, perhaps for the first time in a long time, felt completely safe and secure. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, and the words sounded to him like a promise that only a bright future lay ahead. The two of them went to the local store, where every shelf was adorned with a variety of goods that reflected the palette of local life. This trip was not just a purchase of necessary things, but a kind of adventure for Ludwig, who step by step discovered a new world. The store clerk, smiling at their warm interaction, gave the boy a bun as a token of goodwill, a small but so important gesture of kindness and hospitality. This day was memorable for both of them. For Yunju, as the day when she truly felt responsible for her little ward, and for Ludwig, as the beginning of his new life full of joy and care. Together they walked down the street, and every step they took was filled with meaning and confidence that despite all the difficulties, they could overcome them together. Ludwig, without wasting a moment, addressed his thanks to the saleswoman. His words were full of sincere gratitude. The saleswoman, watching this touching moment, could not hide her delight. It was a picture of true childlike spontaneity and kindness, which is so rare in everyday life. As soon as Yunju and Ludwig left the store, the first snow began to fall. The white flakes gently touched their faces, bringing with them a sense of something new and magical. The moment would have been perfect if not for the shadow of sadness that suddenly appeared on Ludwig's face. The snow seemed to remind him of something deeply personal and perhaps painful. Yunju, noticing the change in his mood, quickly suggested we distract ourselves and make a snowman together, hoping to bring the joy back into his eyes. As if making magic out of every touch of snow, they set about creating their winter friend. This activity not only warmed their bodies with active movement, but also filled their hearts with warmth. In the process, Ludwig gradually returned to his usual mood, a smile playing on his lips again. Together, they chose place after place where the snowman would stand, discussed which branches would be good for arms and which carrot would be the best for the nose. Each stage of their work together brought Ludwig more and more joy and made him forget what had once dampened his spirits. In creating the snowman, Yunju and Ludwig weren't just playing winter games, they were building a bridge through hardships and unpleasant memories together. learning the art of finding joy in small moments and sharing the abiding belief that after any cold winter comes spring. When evening came, Yunju's house was filled with the warmth and coziness of the Christmas atmosphere. On this special evening, she, her uncle, and Jin gathered together to celebrate Christmas. This evening was a true embodiment of family warmth and joy, when everyone, with care and love, gave each other gifts, making this moment even more magical and unforgettable. Mutual smiles, sincere wishes, and joyful laughter filled the room, creating a feeling of complete harmony and happiness. After the tumultuous emotions and joyous moments as the party came to an end, Ludwig, weary from the excitement of the day, fell asleep peacefully, nestled on Yunju's legs. At this moment in time, when the room was quiet and calm, Yunju was gripped by a deep thoughtfulness. She reflected on how quickly those 3 years with Ludwig had flown by, each day filled with meaning, joy, and small discoveries. These years became for her not only the time spent in bringing up a boy from another world, but also the most beautiful period in her life, overflowing with emotions, affection, and deep love for her ward. Sitting in the semi-darkness of the decorated room, she felt how every moment spent with Ludwig had enriched her life with new values and experiences. This evening was a symbol of their journey together, filled with happiness and understanding. In her heart, Yunju realized that Ludwig's upbringing was not only his training and growth, but also her own journey of self-discovery, teaching her to see beauty in simple things and to find joy in every moment of life. In the midst of the warm evening, when the atmosphere was filled with joy and family coziness, Yunju received an unexpected notice that was like a cold shower hitting her. The message was brief, but its contents struck her to the core. In just 72 hours, Ludwig's custody would be over, and Yunju would have to return the boy to the orphanage. Although deep down she was aware of the temporary nature of her role as guardian, the reality of this message took her by surprise. This thought of being separated from Ludwig caused Yunju's emotions to swirl. All that time they had spent together had strengthened their bond into a deep affection that was like a mother's love. She wondered how, after all these moments of joy and sorrow experienced together, she would be able to let go of Ludwig and start over with another child. How would it be possible to replace this unique bond with a new educational experience? This question hung in the air, leaving Yunju in a state of confusion and anxiety. The thought of the impending separation caused her heart to feel heavy and sorrowful. Ludwig was not just a ward, but a part of her life, an ideal for which she strove to become a better person. The possibility of losing him, not knowing what awaited him in the future and how his fate would turn out, was unbearable. At the same time, she realized that her duty as guardian was to give Ludwig all she could in the short time they had allotted. But her heart refused to accept the thought of separation, and every cell of her being resisted this inevitable outcome. Yunju was facing the hardest choice of her life: how to let go of Ludwig when every part of her soul was attached to him, and how to find the strength to start over with another child when her heart was completely given to this little man who had so suddenly burst into her life and become an integral part of it. Yunju faced a dilemma that required not only courage and determination, but also an understanding of the underlying mechanisms of the world she lives in. The decision to keep Ludwig by her side, even at the cost of losing her job and possible judgment from society, spoke to the depth of her affection and love for the boy. It was a choice of heart versus mind, a choice that could change her entire life. However, talking to Kay opened Yunju's eyes to something she couldn't have foreseen. After learning that Ludwig was a soul from another dimension broadcasting into their world, Yunju found herself in an even more confusing situation. The information that they are raising abnormal children from other dimensions at God's will added a whole new level of complexity to the story. It was far beyond her understanding and experience, putting her in front of the fact that their mission was not a simple act of charity or social work at all. Kay's words that if Ludwig didn't return home, the earth might suffer added weight to the decision Yunju had to make. Now she was facing not only a matter of personal feelings and emotional attachment, but the well-being of an entire planet. It was a responsibility she could not ignore, and now her decision had to consider not only the good of Ludwig, but also the possible consequences for the whole world. The realization that Ludwig was part of a much larger cosmic task might have caused many to retreat, but for Yunju, it tested her resolve and love. The question of how she could reconcile her desire to leave Ludwig with the need to fulfill a higher assignment required her to find a way that would satisfy both parties, both to keep Ludwig and to protect Earth from the possible negative consequences of his abandonment. Kay's answer that Ludwig's family has divine powers and that Ludwig can live without a soul for years opens up new vistas for Yunju, but also heightens her anxieties. After learning that the time limit has come and Ludwig needs to return, Yunju is faced with a difficult choice. Her reaction when she, barely holding back tears, appeals to God to solve the problem so that Ludwig can stay with her, speaks to the depth of her desperation and her desire to protect the boy from the cruelty she believes he will have to endure when he returns to his parents. Kay, on the other hand, in stating that such a decision is unacceptable, emphasizes the rigidity and immutability of divine laws and orders. This raises questions about the limits of interference with the divine plan and how much the fates of individual souls matter against the cosmic scale of existence. For Yunju, whose love and affection for Ludwig puts her in confrontation with the inevitable and perhaps unjust, in her view, divine laws, it becomes a test of faith and belief. This moment also highlights the dilemma between individual feelings and the common good, between human emotion and divine order. Yunju is faced with a reality in which love and caring can't seem to change what is destined to happen. It provokes deep reflection on the nature of justice and the sacrifices that sometimes have to be made for the greater good. The dialogue between Yunju and Kay reflects the eternal struggle between heart and mind, between the desire to protect loved ones and the need to obey laws that override personal interests. It leaves Yunju in a state of reflection about the sacrifices sometimes required to maintain order in the world, and whether there is a way to find a balance between love and duty. Anxiety rose in Yunju's heart as she realized that she was unable to allow Ludwig to return to his world, to the family whose abuse had left indelible wounds on his soul. The thought tormented her, for Ludwig's return seemed no longer possible, which meant that she could not let him go and condemn him to the suffering he might endure again in his world. Yunju's desperation made her ask Kay for help, hoping that he could do something to change this desperate situation. For 3 years of reflection and inner turmoil, Yunju convinced herself that Ludwig could not find happiness without her presence in his life, that she was his support and protection from all adversity. But now, faced with the harsh reality of their separation, she realized that it was actually she herself who could not imagine her life without Ludwig. This realization came to her like a thunderclap, forcing her to rethink her feelings and Ludwig's place in her life. Her love and affection for Ludwig, which she thought was a protection for him, was actually an anchor keeping her herself afloat in a turbulent sea of emotion and uncertainty. Thus, Yunju was faced with a dilemma that required her to not only rethink her feelings, but also to find ways to deal with the situation she found herself in with Ludwig. Recognizing that she could not live without him was a new test for her, on the way to which she had to find the strength not only to fight for her love, but also to find a way out of the current situation in which they both found themselves hostage to circumstances. In the privacy of her home, Yunju sank into a deep depression, each bite of food she devoured seeming only a reminder of her powerlessness before her inevitable farewell to Ludwig. Her days, which should have been filled with precious moments and memories, were melting away irrevocably, while she could not find the strength to push away the heaviness enveloping her heart and use these last precious hours to create unforgettable memories with Ludwig. However, when Ludwig noticed her condition, his concern was the push that made Yunju put aside her apathy. Her sudden transformation into an active and full-of-life girl, even though it was a playful one, helped her realize that every minute spent together with Ludwig was priceless. This realization flared brightly in her heart, prompting her to think that giving up and letting despair steal these last moments together from them would be a true tragedy. So, faced with the reality of their impending separation, Yunju resolutely made it her mission to make the remaining time with Ludwig truly unforgettable. She decided that these last days before his return to his homeworld should be a testament to their love, friendship, and understanding, so that despite distance and time, they could keep these memories as a precious gift that would warm their hearts in the coming separation. Despite Yunju's best efforts to be active and energetic, deep inside her heart there was an endless sadness that accompanied her every movement, every look and smile like a shadow. This heaviness was inevitable, for her farewell to Ludwig was not just a parting, but the tearing away of a part of herself that she could not and would not lose. And though she tried hard to hide her inner struggle under a mask of joy and carelessness, the depth of her feelings could not go unnoticed by Ludwig. Ludwig, with his fine sense of empathy and deep understanding of Yunju, no doubt felt the same pain of loss as she did. He saw behind her feigned activity the artificially aged smile and knew that behind that facade lay a storm of emotion that she was trying to contain.